Guys, welcome back to another video. In today's video, I'm going to be breaking down MOA versus MRAD, or MO as it's also referred to. I'm going to give you some of the advantages, disadvantages. I'm going to explain both of those systems. We're going to have a look at them objectively, side by side. And at the end of this video, you're going to be able to make a decision whether you should buy your optic in MO or in MOA, or if they're actually this way around. But you get what I'm saying. It's going to be a fun one. What I want to start off the bat with is you cannot go wrong with either one of these. Both are going to get you to the same result. They each have their little things, but both systems are angular units of measure. Okay, so it's got nothing to do with either the metric system or the imperial system, although it depends on which system you are. There might be some advantages to you as a user with ease of picking it up, but we'll get to that sort of later in the video. Anyway, the point I kind of want to make here is you're not going to go wrong whether you go MOA or you go MO. The fact that you're shooting, fine by me. If you're new and you're wondering what happened to my hand, I'll explain that at the end of the video. But yeah, let's get into this, shall we? So what I have found in life is that your ability to use something proficiently and effectively largely depends on how well you know that system. Now that applies to this too. So here we've got a 4:16 MOA based hunting scope. Okay, every single click is 1/4 of a minute of angle, or MOA. So that basically means you need 4 clicks to get to 1. Okay, so we're going to go 0.25, 0.5, 0.75, 1. Okay, so keep that in mind. On a MO based scope, or MRAD, it works in a 1 in 10 system. Every click is 0.1 mil. Now that really doesn't make a big difference if you're not shooting a lot, but later when we look at the side-by-sides ballistics, for depending on what sport you're doing, it may actually play quite a role in your decision-making process. Now let's jump into the MOA-based system in a little bit more detail. So basically how the MOA-based system works, if you guys remember in the beginning of the video, we said that both are angular measurements. So forget that this one's got to do with inches and yards, and this one's got to do with centimeters and meters. Yes, that's going to play an effect in how well you can use them, but that's not actually how they work. So an MOA-based scope basically takes a circle, divides that circle into 360 degrees, and every single one of those degrees has 60 MOA minutes of angle per degree. Now conversely, if you take that same circle with a MO-based scope, that circle is divided into 6,284.3 divisions. Okay, so quite a random number. You don't really need to know that in the greater scheme of things, but that's just explaining how basically both systems work. Now, a lot of people say that MOA-based scopes are more accurate. Or not more accurate, they're more precise in your ability to dial in exactly where you need to be. Now, technically, that is correct. 1/4 of a MOA is a finer adjustment than 1/10 of a mil. Now to put that into perspective, the difference basically translates, if I take my calipers here, that's the difference between 1 click on an MOA based scope and 1 click on a mil based scope. Now, I'm a relatively proficient shooter. Can I hold that difference? No, not really. And most people in the reality of the situation can't do that. So I don't think the fact that MOA is technically speaking a finer adjustment, although exaggerated by a lot of people, it shouldn't really play a big factor in your purchasing decision. Now you say, Pete, I know some of the MOA scopes like the Swarovski X5, which by the way I had, offers a 1 in 8 MOA optic. Now that is an option, but then it just gets a little bit more complicated. And you guys will see that once we sort of look at the side-by-side drop charts for my sport specifically. Now if we scale this out to, let's say, 1,000 yards, okay, 1 click on an MOA based scope is going to be 2.6 inches. That's your amount of adjustment you're gonna get. So 2.6 every time you click that scope is it's getting bigger. Don't do it, guys. That's 2.6 right there. So every time you click your scope, that's the adjustment you're gonna get. And on a MO-based scope, it's basically going to be 3.6, which is going to put us round about there. So the difference being exactly 1 inch at 1,000 yards, which is smaller than that still, that is 1 inch now. So that's the difference between 1 click on a 1/4 MOA scope and on a 1 in 10 MO-based system. At 1,000 yards, 1 inch, if you can shoot better than that, I take my hat off to you. Now, if we take a slight step back and we look at the angular measurement system, you know, how much is 1 MOA at 100 yards? Now, most people round that down to 1 inch, when in fact, it's 1.047 inches. Okay, now that is a little bit of a problem in the fact that people are rounding it down, because when you, again, stretch that out, and that's the thing of shooting, what a lot of people don't seem to get, is the further out you go, any errors you make gets vastly bigger. 1.047 inches at 100 yards, if you're rounding that down, at 1,000 yards, again, it's 2 clicks the difference you're going to have, because it's going to be almost 10.5. It's going to be 10.47, which is quite a big variance. I mean, then we're talking 5.2 inches difference in your bullet drop. And now that becomes rather substantial at that kind of distance. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Now, another thing I hear quite often at shooting matches is how many MOA equals 1 mil. Okay, 3.438 is the correct answer to that. Now, the reason that does become a problem is because if I give you a 7.5 number and you need to do math on the fly, it is a little bit more difficult. I also find the quarter-based system is more difficult for our brains to deal with, at least mine. I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I kind of like the 1 in 10, it's quite easy to make divisions. I can dial precise numbers and things. Now, what I want to show you guys here, which is really important, and especially for our sport, if you need to be doing a lot of dialing on stage, if you need to memorize dope data on previous engagement, it's quite important to have easier numbers to remember. So I want to quickly grab my phone here. I'm going to show both of these to you guys. I'm going to have elevation on this side, and I'm going to have windage on that side. I've added a little bit of a crosswind for us, so we've got windage data on this side too. Rifle I just put in 6.5 Creedmoor, 140 grain bullet, 750 feet per second. Super easy. Okay, quite a standard round that quite a lot of you would very likely shoot. Now, if we look at our drop charts, first of all, let's have a look at the vertical drop. Okay, so let's start with 500. In MOA, I need to hold 10.9 MOA. Now, here's the challenge. With MOA, because we're limited to quarter values, I can't actually dial 10.9. I have to round that up and go to 11. Now, will you miss because of that? No, you won't, so don't worry about that. Conversely, on the mil side, I only have to dial 3.2. Okay, so that's a much easier number to remember too. Because remember now, on the MOA side, I'm already dealing with 3 digits. And by the way, the app that I'm using for this is rounding up. Okay, most apps and ballistic solvers will actually give you the MOA 12.5 or 12.75, and that kind of leads you to deal with 4 numbers. Where on the mil system, at least on my rifle, all the way out to 1,000 meters, okay, 1,100 yards, you're only dealing with 2 digits. So that's a little bit easier, and you never have to round up and sort of make that call for yourself. Now let's take that out a little bit further. Let's go to 950 meters here. Classic example. Okay, so in MOA, I would need to remember 30.75, okay? In MRAD, I would only need to remember 8.9. Now, if you're shooting a stationary target, you're lying prone, that's not a deal breaker. But if you're on a precision rifle stage, you're running and gunning, and you're trying to memorize numbers, to deal with 2 numbers all the way out to 1,000 yards and memorizing 4, different targets, that's quite easy to do. As soon as it's double digits and it's quarters and things like that, it does become a little bit more difficult. Also, if somebody's spotting for you, it's much easier to give you a correction, 0.3 instead of 0.75. I tend to find people get a little bit confused with that quarter system. So that's something to keep in mind. The next thing you should really keep in mind is, what are people using around you? What is your buddy using? If you're only going to go out hunting, you're new in shooting, all your buddies are shooting MOA, absolutely buy an MOA-based scope, because that's going to be easier for you to learn and your buddies will be able to help you. However, if you're getting into precision rifle, for example, and you look at the statistics, 90% of the guys are shooting mil-based scopes, and I think that's largely due to the military influence too overseas. A lot of those guys are shooting in the precision rifle series, but so are a lot of dentists and stuff like that. Mils is dominating there, so there is some merit in that system too. Here in South Africa, for us dealing with meters and centimeters, 1 click at 100 meters is 1 centimeter, so therefore 1 mil is 10 centimeters. It's quite an easy system to learn, okay? It is new here for us in South Africa specifically, but I have found I started shooting on MOA scopes, okay? And I eventually transitioned to a mil-based scope, and over time sold every single, this is not my scope by the way, sold every scope that I had in MOA, and I've gone over to mil, and it's just much easier. If I'm shooting a precision rifle match and the guy in front of me is shooting MOA, for example, and he comes off the stage and he says, I was holding, let's actually look at our windage chart here. So at 900 yards, in MOA, he'd be holding almost 2 minutes. Okay, let's make it 9:50. He's holding 2 minutes. Now for me, I have to do some math now to convert that over into a mil hold, where if my buddy's shooting, you know, a mil-based scope, he says, Pete, I was holding 0.6, mate. It's easy. Okay, so that's kind of challenge you get there. It's almost like you're speaking a completely different language if you're the only guy in your squad with the MOA-based scope. And you can ask anybody that's been in that situation. It kind of sucks. Okay, the US military is predominantly mil, and a lot of manufacturers are pushing mil scopes in order to try and get those contracts. So that's something to keep in mind too. Now, most of those manufacturers are going to offer you the same scope, like this Gen 2 Razor, in either MOA or mil. So you can decide whatever you want. If I put up both reticles, the MOA and the MRAD version of the EBR7C reticle here, they're basically the exact same thing. There's maybe, if you really want to be nitpicky, a few more numbers in the MOA-based one, but it really is much of a muchness. Seldomly, you're just glancing at the numbers. You could argue that it's maybe easier to pick up 2.5 than, whatever it's going to be. 2.5 on mil is going to give me 9 basically in MOA. So it's a little bit smoother, it's a little bit faster. One of the other things to keep in mind, in the past, manufacturers would, ship optics with MOA-based reticles and mil-based turrets or vice versa. Now that's a problem, because if you're sighting in your rifle and you're measuring with your reticle, I was shooting 3 MOA high, and now you want to dial that on your, what do you dial now? That kind of thing becomes a problem. But lately, I haven't really seen that ever with buying a new scope. So that's really not a thing anymore. But basically, guys, what I wanted to sort of summarize of this video is you're not going to go wrong with either. One is not better than the other one. Yes, mil, especially in my sport, precision rifle, has some advantages. Purely, I would say the biggest one there is going to be it's easier to remember those numbers on a stage to try and memorize your dope. Because if you've memorized your dope, it's one less thing to worry about. Or you go into a stage and your little dope card breaks off or it shifts on your arm and now you don't have it. So I tend to try and lock them into my head before a stage. And then the other thing that most of your fellow shooters will be shooting in mils is also quite a big advantage. So keep that in mind. I hope this has given you guys enough information to make a decision. Let me know in the comments down below whether you shoot mil or MOA. If I missed anything, yeah, this has been a fun video to make. Broke my arm in a motocross accident. We're recovering from that. Yeah. It is what it is. It's pretty sore today. Today's 3 weeks after surgery, and to be honest, it's a bit of a bad day. There's good days and bad days, but it's brutal today. So, anyway, I'm now going to attempt to edit this video up. I'll see you guys in the next one. Thank you very much for everything, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you're new here and you're not subscribed, please consider that and smash the like button. It really helps us out in doing what we do here. Cheers, guys. Bye. This is, hands down, one of the most requested videos. That was my first attempt at the opener. Let's try that again. What should I be getting? I'm getting into the sport. I really don't know what my phone is doing there. Damn it. We've gotten on the channel. In today's video, let me put it on Do Not Disturb. So, if you're a regular watcher, you're gonna... Why would the regular watcher be not subscribed? Hands down, other than 308 versus 6.5 Creedmoor. Okay, let's just start over. Anyway, okay, this is probably gonna be the ending, so please subscribe. We'd really appreciate that, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye. Oh, my shattered nerves. Woo!